Thousands of migrant children could be detained indefinitely. An unprecedented number of unaccompanied migrants are at risk of spending the rest of their childhoods in federal custody, CBS News learned in an exclusive interview with the head of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, or the agency that cares for these children. The federal government is required to pursue prompt. Unfortunately, on their 18th birthdays, many of the children will be taken from OR's youth holding facilities, referred to as shelters, to adult detention centers operated by Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE). The number of children in this group has risen sharply in recent years, and alarming and deeply. Children in OR custody are labeled internally as belonging to one of four groups. Category 1 children have an identified parent or legal guardian U, referred to as a sponsor U in the U.S. Category 2 the children who may be stuck in federal custody U. Category 4 U have no identifiable sponsor, according to the government. As of June, Category 4 children represented roughly 1/3 of all kids in OR care, a far greater portion than in past years, according to former OR Director Bob Carey, who served during the last 2 years of the Obama administration. It's a February 2016 report by the Government Accountability Office called the use of Category 4 designations a. Another former OR official, who asked not to be named, called the sudden change troubling. Having a landmark 1997 court settlement known as the Flores Agreement requires the federal government to try to unite unaccompanied migrant children with relatives as quickly as possible. However, all three said they've long feared that the Trump administration's immigration policy changes would have a chilling show. In fiscal year 2018, there was a dramatic drop in the percentage of children released from OR care compared to previous years. Separated from his father, then labeled Category 4. Texas attorney Ricardo de Anda represents a 9-year-old former Category 4 boy who was separated from his father in May 2018 as a result of zero. The father was sent back to Guatemala and is in hiding, but has had maintained contact with U.S. attorneys. With no other de Anda located a family who wanted to take the boy in, and introduced the boy's parents to them through a series of video conferences and phone calls. The father signed or rejected the request, according to court documents. The boy sued and was allowed to go live with the sponsor family. OR did not respond. De Anda thinks more kids should get the opportunity afforded his client. He says the government, for many kids in long-term OR care, life can be particularly unstable, said attorney Neha Desai, director of immigration at the nonprofit National Center for Youth Law. She said kids are often beholden to the caseworkers tasked with vetting their sponsors. Some Category 4 children end up in OR's foster care system, but the majority remain in OR's network of nearly 170 shelters, some of which have been the subject of withering widespread criticism. The largest such, unreleased July 17, found at least 97 Category 4 children in Homestead. The facility's direct Amnesty keeping count. As attorneys, advocates, and former OR officials track similar cases, they question how the system could be both seemingly overflowing with unplaceable kids, while also apparently becoming more efficient by the day. Agency statistics show the average length of care for migrant children dropping from a high of 93 days in November 2018 to as low as 45 days in June. He and others said they want the agency to release statistics that differentiate between the average length of care for children who have been released, and the average length of care for all children currently in OR custody. OR did not reply to questions seeking average statistics that differentiate between the average length of care for children who are released, and the average length of care for the agency's entire population, including those who remain in custody. A. Or statistics show the overall population of unaccompanied migrant children has decreased from more than 13,000 in June to 10,100 as of Tuesday, amid an annual summertime decrease in immigration across the southern border. It is not clear, they.
Raindrops, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that.